And welcome back to the NWA 1983 project. I'm your host, Lex G, and with me, as always, Matt Riley. How you doing tonight, Matt?
I'm as happy as a dog.
Okay, I don't know what that means, but...
Uh,
So tonight's episode will be a closed-circuit event airing nationwide, live from the Cow Palace, and right outside of San Francisco. The main event of this show will be Harley Race taking on NWA World Champion Antonio Inoki in a rematch from Japan. Let's see if Inoki can hold on to the belts, or maybe Race can win it once again. So in this episode, we're going to talk about San Francisco wrestling. Roy Shire's big-time wrestling. Now, full disclosure, guys, I'm trying to find any kind of information on San Francisco wrestling was exceedingly difficult. There is no Wikipedia page for San Francisco wrestling. There's not even a Wikipedia page for Roy Shire. So I had to dig a little bit deeper, a little bit hard to get some information for you guys. But San Francisco wrestling was founded in 1960 by wrestler-turned-promoter Roy Shire. The Pacific Coast Athletic Corporation operated out of San Francisco for more than 20 years and joined the National Wrestling Alliance in 1968. Operating under the brand name Big Time Wrestling, this group was headed by Roy Shire and was a longtime home territory for influential names such as Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson. They were known throughout the world for their famous live shows at the amazing Cow Palace. In later years, Shire gave up running a full-time territory and booked his talent through NWA affiliate offices out of Los Angeles, Portland, and Florida. So guys, I guess what San Francisco is most known for, the San Francisco territory is most known for battle royals. And there's some conjecture and debate if the battle royal was created in the San Francisco territory or not. Who knows? But again, they were very known for their big-time, big-money, big-star battle royals. Kind of reminds me of tag team wrestling. Now, tag team wrestling, some people attribute tag team wrestling to being created in Houston. Others will say it was created in Mexico, but no one knows for sure. So some of the big stars that came out of San Francisco, we have Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson, Roddy Piper, Chavo Guerrero, Playboy Buddy Rose, Moondog Maine. It's a name we don't talk about very often, or at all. Yeah. Don Morocco, Ron Starr, Haystacks Calhoun, Big Cat Ernie Ladd. The Sheik spent some time over there as well. Now, in terms of San Francisco, they use kind of a studio format, sort of similar to Georgia Championship Wrestling or Championship Wrestling from Florida. You would have your matches at a small studio in San Francisco, and basically you would have enhancement matches or jobber matches with one or two big stars, and all they're doing is promoting the next show at the Cow Palace. The Cow Palace being the equivalent of the Omni in Georgia. Again, they had lots of great feuds. Again, we see a young Rowdy Piper, and the one of the things I noticed about Roddy is this motherfucker was always good. You know, you can tell by his early 20s that he was a star already. Promos are on fire. This is good Roddy Piper promos. I mean, I know we've seen some not so good Roddy Piper promos towards the end of his career, especially his run in WCW and his later run in WWF. I'm talking about the man had so much intensity. You took him serious. Like, you thought he was a legit badass, and whether or not he's a legit badass is neither here or there. That most people in the world know that Roddy Piper, although being smaller than just about everyone else, especially in the WWF, and he's not a big guy by any stretch of the imagination, you thought he was going to fuck you up for real. Some other big names coming out of San Francisco. You had Pepper Gomez, one of my favorites, Rocky Johnson, Don Carson, Mr. Fuji, and then Mighty Igor, and Anderson brother Lars Anderson. I like Lars Anderson.
Lars Anderson.
Yeah. So Matt, what are your thoughts overall on San Francisco wrestling?
Well, I think like a lot of the old territories, it's interesting to see how they shaped their stars. I think it really shows what promoters were willing to let guys do a lot of innovative things. And I think part of it goes back to, I always think of like, cable in the 80s. You didn't really know what you had, so you had all kinds of crazy shit on there.
Just shenanigans and tomfoolery all around.
Right. So, speaking of shenanigans, cat just knocked a ping pong ball down the stairs. Damn you! the shenanigans tomfoolery, but like you got all these different personalities, and I think one of the things we've had up until the last couple of years, we had no real hotbeds. A few of them, but like very limited. And the guys that came out of those territories were then molded into what they wanted them to be.
Right.
So like for instance, if you went to the WWE training center, they would then wrap it up as, well, we took them and polished them up and made them who they are. And it's like, that guy was on the road for 10 years. I don't think you made him much of anybody who he is.
The curious thing about the WWE now, they're going back to their original formula of what made them successful. Originally, it was taking the best talent throughout the world, regardless of size, race, gender, and trying to make stars out of them. And this is the formula they used in the 80s. They brought in Hulk Hogan as Hulk Hogan. Again, they didn't polish him up. Roddy Piper was Roddy Piper. Don Morocco was Don Morocco. Paul Orndorff was Paul Orndorff. And these guys worked smaller territories, obviously. In some cases, we were talking about Jim Crockett Promotions being a similar size to the WWF, but they went away from what they were doing, which was all giant dudes fighting Bruno and getting beat. I mean, that's the way they worked the territories, big man territory, right?
Right.
And it's ironic is that the last 10 years or so, let's say 8 years, it's been just the same thing. Big guys, WWF style. We were getting people set up for Cena. And that worked for a while, and now they're going back to like, okay, if you can work and you can cut a promo, you're in. We don't care. You don't care if you worked for TNA, if they find you in Japan. We don't care. We'll take anybody at this point. So I'm glad, in terms of WWF or WWE, like I call them WWF, fuck it.
Yeah, right.
That they're kind of opening the floodgates here to kind of. I think we're in the midst of a new boom period. I'm not saying this year, maybe next year. Definitely the year after that we're going to see another boom period. The guys like AJ Styles on top, Kevin Owens on top, and they're really doing big things for them, doing big business. But in terms of San Francisco, again, San Francisco's heyday was before the advent of cable television. So again, there's not a lot of video footage of them. Their local TV out of San Francisco and a couple of channels, some syndication, but, and they didn't keep the tapes back then. They fucking just taped over them because Betamax tapes, which they used for television, they fucking were expensive. So they just fucking taped over it.
Yeah.
So the footage out there, someone had to record it off a VCR. It doesn't really exist. If you can find a program, you can find some match results. But again, the information online isn't complete by any stretch of the imagination. It was not like there's books out there regarding San Francisco as a territory, at least not that I could find. Had to kind of skim through articles to kind of read up about it, because it is one of the promotions that we've heard about, but we don't know about. Kind of like Hawaii. We know there's a Hawaii territory, and we know that guys wrestled there, but you don't know any of the big angles or the big feuds or what was happening. So, similar to San Francisco, I don't know about the big feuds. I know Pat Patterson, Ray Stevens. I know Piper was there fighting Chavo Guerrero. Pepper Gomez, Rocky Johnson was there. But again, if you don't have the wealth of information on like what was the big storylines, what were the big angles, what were the big feuds, what drew in San Francisco, we don't really know, and the the information out there is very much incomplete, unfortunately. That is San Francisco wrestling in a nutshell. Again, I wish there was more information about San Francisco. And guys, if I find more information about it, I will let you know. If you guys have any kind of knowledge or what have you, please leave a comment in the comment section, because I would love to be educated on this topic. So guys, it's been a tough 2 weeks in terms of the world of professional wrestling. We lost some big time names, and we're gonna go over and we'll talk about some of these names that we recently just lost, that just passed away. First, let's talk about one of your favorite wrestlers, Matt. George the Animal Steele. What are your thoughts on George Steele?
No, I like George Steele. He was what I would say was an example of a comedy act late in his career, but he was a feared monster early on.
Oh my God.
And that's the thing. It's kind of funny. You think about who he used to be, and then what he was towards the end, which is just the guy with the green tongue and chewing turnbuckles. But way before that, he was, this, monstrous madman that people feared.
Again, he was a madman that could work. Kind of reminds me a lot of Gorilla Monsoon. Big dude, looked like a monster, but he actually had an amateur background, which is interesting to me. Again, another monster for Bruno to slay. Had a couple of runs with Andre, too. And then basically, I think we all know him for the crazy goofball character in the '80s. You know, he was a heel for the first part of that, feuding with Hogan for a couple of matches. And then he finally turned, and that was a big deal with Urbano and. And one of the funniest things I've ever seen is the Tuesday Night Titans when they electro-shock therapy on him.
Yes.
And he learned how to talk, and then they did it again, and he burned his brain out, and then he was a dumbass again.
Yeah.
And some of the other stuff like George Steele at the zoo, and he's hiding in the zoo, and they went and grabbed him, and again the feud with Savage, just amazing. Yeah. The Beauty and the Beast angle where George Steele is chasing after Elizabeth and Macho's being crazy. And they had a pretty good match at WrestleMania 2. He was in the corner of Ricky Steamboat at WrestleMania 3. Kidnapped Elizabeth once. We don't know what he did to her backstage.
Yes.
That's what Jesse told us. Like, we don't know what he's doing to her backstage. I was like,
diddle, diddle, diddle.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I think that whole Savage Steel thing, which led into the Steamboat part of it, really was, a great way to, play that whole thing out. And, of course, towards the end, we'd see Steele every so often pop up out of the blue, like, oh, look, here's George Steele's back, and he wants to chew a turnbuckle, Okay.
Well, we often forget that not only was he a wrestler, he became a road agent. He's putting together matches for some of these guys. He worked in the office after his career was over. He was also, he only wrestled part-time. He was a full-time teacher and football coach out of Detroit. So he would coach football, and then when he had time off, he would go on the road and kind of hang out. And he was just a part-time wrestler. So it was a big deal to have George Steele. And he was one of those guys that Vince really liked. He was one of the guys that were able to transition from your 60s and 70s type wrestling into your 80s, like I'm big, over-the-top, character. Comedy act, you know what I mean? A lot of guys weren't able to do it. He did it really well. So, it's sad. He died at 79 from kidney failure, and overall that's pretty sad. But he was also an actor. He was in Ed Wood. Remember, he was in Ed Wood.
Yes.
Yeah. That's Tor Johnson. If you ever seen a picture of Tor Johnson and George Steele, they look almost identical. So. Yeah,
it was kind of funny. So I'm like, oh wow.
Yeah, he won the biggest acts of the 80s and had his own action figure with the George Steele doll, which was fantastic. So I really did enjoy Jim Myers, also known as George the Animal Steele. So next up, we'll talk about Chavo Guerrero. What are your thoughts on Chavo?
Well, Chavo Guerrero is, most fans these days, if you know the name Guerrero, it's for either Lucha Underground or, Eddie Guerrero.
Right.
But I think that's one of those families that really, made a huge difference. Came into being here. I think when I think of like that Guerrero name, I always think of like they would come on like AWA or and like have feuds and be like, oh, the Guerreros, but like you never really understood how good they were.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing too, is like you have these guys come in and it's sort of like when you see somebody like maybe not so much anymore like
Brad Armstrong.
You know what it's like? Here's a good example. Here's a good analogy. It's like when a famous soccer player from Europe comes over to America.
Yeah.
Like David Beckham came over, but he was past his prime.
Right.
Like his best days, granted, he played well, were in the past. And that's where I think a lot of these guys, at the time they made it, either A, they were past their prime, or B, they didn't translate into what they were doing now.
Right.
Or at the time. Like he wasn't a huge dude, so he wasn't, made for 80s WWE.
We would see him more in the AWA, in Mid-South, NWA Hollywood, lots of time in Japan. But you always knew the Guerreros. If you're a wrestling fan, you know the Guerreros. And like, oh, these guys are, they're randomly in a Crockett Cup, or, they're always used, decently. But I think a lot of people remember Chavo as Chavo Classic when he won the Cruiserweight Championship in 2004 in the WWE.
Yeah.
And he's the oldest Cruiserweight champion of all time. A lot of people say that Chavo, before Eddie, had the most charisma out of all the Guerreros.
Really?
And if you look at early Eddie Guerrero stuff, that motherfucker had no charisma.
Yeah.
He was very, very wooden. It was Chavo that had the charisma. And I heard he was very responsible bringing that out of Eddie as well, because they were much older than Eddie. Eddie was extremely young. Chavo was born in 1949. So they were way older, and and it's sad to lose another great wrestling star, another great wrestling family, and that's sad. My condolences goes out to their family. And Chavo Guerrero was in the movie The One and Only with Henry Winkler as Indian Joe. We talked about that movie on
We did.
a past show. If anyone go watch The One and Only Henry Winkler's wrestling movie, it's fantastic. So yeah, so that's Chavo. In addition, we lost Uncle Ivan himself, Ivan Koloff. Now, what are your thoughts on Uncle Ivan?
Ivan Koloff is one of those guys that was a solid performer. Again, another guy who was a huge star earlier on and came back in the 80s kind of as a renaissance with Nikita and the whole Russian menace angle. Now, was he the one that beat Bruno?
Yeah.
Okay, so he beat Bruno.
He beat Bruno in his prime.
Yeah.
Big, like, no one understands. Like, we'll talk in kayfabe terms. He was the guy chosen to beat Bruno.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That how much of a big deal that is. And he was huge back then. Like, people remember Uncle Ivan as the guy that we saw on TBS, but I think we forget that he was the Russian Bear, like legit Russian Bear.
Yeah.
Like, he was huge. He rivaled Bruno in size. I mean, that's when that's how they could put him against him, because he was so big, and he slimmed down quite a bit. So when he beat Bruno at the Garden in 1971, they say that the Garden was silent.
Really?
It was silent. It was like they could, like, kind of. Remember when Brock Lesnar beat the Undertaker?
Yes.
It was like that. Like,
wow.
Like, they couldn't believe it. They could not fucking believe it. People were having heart attacks ringside because they were so upset that Bruno had lost. And he ended Bruno's 7-year title reign. Holy shit.
Yeah.
So being chosen as the guy to finally defeat Bruno, again, it was just to get the belt to Pedro, because he lost it. He only held the belt for 21 days.
Yeah.
But that's a big fucking deal. And, I believe Bruno was, helped the selection process. Okay, this is the guy that's finally going to beat me. And that was awesome. And then, in terms of the NWA, fucking Christ. In terms of Jim Cochran Promotions, he did so much over there. Even before the whole Nikita Koloff thing, he was doing big stuff over there, where he was teaming with, like, Ray Stevens, and he beat Paul Jones and Matt Superstar to win the NWA Tag Team titles, and he won the belts with my favorite wrestler, Don Cornudle. And then they had the group with him and Nikita, Crusher Khrushchev, Barry Darso, Demolition Smash. Again, they were a big part of that promotion. And I think some people kind of de-emphasize Uncle Ivan's kind of place on that show. Again, you had your Dusty and your Flair, your Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express. Yeah. The Russians were a big fucking deal, and then when Nikita turned on Ivan, that was a big. I mean, Nikita Koloff ended the Cold War, 1986, and Ivan was bringing, like, the Russian assassin #1 and Vladimir Petrov, and to get his revenge, and he was never able to get his revenge. But spent the rest of his time as part of Paul Jones's army, and then he was kind of a coach for the Powers of Pain.
Oh, Powers of Pain.
He also appeared on the very first ECW show in 1992. He appeared on the very first ECW show in 1992.
Oh my God.
ECW liked to use, like, 80s talent big time, like they had Tito Santana and Stan Hansen and Abdullah, Terry Funk, Ivan Koloff was one of those. Overall, I think he's one of the greatest villains in the history of wrestling. From what I understand, one of the nicest guys. I haven't even heard anyone ever talk bad about him, ever. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's sad that we lost another great talent and great knowledge out there.
Yeah.
And I don't think Uncle Ivan is in the Hall of Fame.
No? I'll say no. That's my guess.
I mean, he sued him. He was on that lawsuit, so it's a good possibility.
Oh, was he? Yeah.
Let's scroll down.
His Demolition's not in there, are they? Well, Pork Chop Cash, is he in there?
Should be. Yep, not in the WWE Hall of Fame. We should quickly go through the individuals in the WWE Hall of Fame. So in 1993, they put in Andre the Giant. 1994, they put in Arnold Scotland, Bubba Brazil, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, Chief J Strongbow, Classy Freddy Blassie, and Gorilla Monsoon, and James Dudley. 1995 was Antitino Rocca, Big Cat Ernie Ladd, George Steele, Ivan Putski, Moolah, Grand Wizard, Pedro Morales. 1996, Baron Mikel Cicluna. What? Captain Lou Albano, Jimmy Snuka, Johnny Rods, Killer Kowalski, Pat Patterson, Vincent J. McMahon. 2004, Big John Studd, Don Morocco, Greg Valentine, Harley Race, Jesse Ventura, Junkyard Dog, Sergeant Slaughter, Superstar Billy Graham, Tito Santana, Bobby Heenan. 2005, Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Bob Orton, Jimmy Hartz, Paul Orndorff, Nikolai Volkov, The Iron Sheik. 2006, Bret the Hitman Hart, Eddie Guerrero, Mean Gene Okerlund, Sensational Sherry, Vern Gagne, Tony Atlas. 2007, Dusty Rhodes, Mr. Perfect, Jerry Lawler, Nick Bockwinkel, Mr. Fuji, The Sheik, Jim Ross. 2008, Ric Flair, Peter Maivia, Rocky Johnson, Mae Young, Eddie Graham, Gordon Soley. 2009, Steve Austin, Ricky Steamboat, Bill Watts, Howard Finkel, Coco Beware.
Coco Beware.
2010, Ted DiBiase, Antonio Inoki, Wendy Richter, Mad Dog Vachon, Gorgeous George, Stu Hart. 2011, Shawn Michaels, Jim Duggan, Bob Armstrong, Sonny, Abdullah the Butcher, Mil Mascaras, Edge, Ron Simmons, Yokozuna. 2013, Mick Foley, Bob Backlund, Trish Stratus, Bruno Sammartino, Booker T. 2014, The Ultimate Warrior, Jake Roberts, Lita, Paul Bearer, Carlos Colon, Razor Ramon. 2015, Randy Savage, Rikishi, Alundra Blaze, Larry Zbyszko, Tatsumi Fujinami, Kevin Nash. 2016, Sting, The Godfather, Big Boss Man, Jacqueline, and Stan Hansen. And there's groups. So 96 was the Valiant Brothers, 2006 were the Blackjacks, 2007 were the Wild Samoans, 2008 the Briscoe Brothers, 2009 the Funks, 2009 the Von Erichs, 2011 the Road Warriors, 2012 the Four Horsemen, 2015 the Bushwhackers, and 2016 the Fabulous Freebirds. And I'm not going to go into celebrities because fuck that shit.
Right.
Although they have in 2016, the WWE introduced a new category called Legacy. Inductees under the new category feature wrestlers from the early years of professional wrestling, primarily during the early part of the 20th century. So there is Mildred Burke, Frank Gotch, George Hankensmith, Ed the Strangler Lewis, Pat O'Connor, Luthez, and Sailor Art Thomas. And for this year, Kurt Angle, the Rock and Roll Express, and Teddy Long, who have been announced. Anyone in there that you don't think deserves to be in there that stands out? Now, people argue Coco Beware, but I think it's the only one you get an argument for.
Coco Beware. Is a Mountie in there?
No.
Joe Brothers?
No. They probably should, though. If we do a WrestleMania Quebec, they should.
Well, Demolition.
Well, yes, they should be in there. Like, could you see a scenario where they put, like, Rey Mysterio in, although he's still pretty active?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he's going in regardless.
Huh?
He's going in regardless.
Yeah.
They didn't put Pillman in.
Well, yeah.
I mean, what's the criteria, do you think? Like, is the lowest end Coco Beware? Like Rick Martel's not in. Rick Rude's not in.
Rick Rude?
Yeah.
Yeah, he should be in.
Yeah, clearly.
He was a great, like, figure. Like, he really was. Like, he's one of those guys people waited to see. You know, that's rare.
Rude was good on a couple different levels. Number one, he could talk. Number two, he had a great body. Number three, he was fantastic in the ring. He made the Ultimate Warrior in those matches.
Yeah.
Like, he did an amazing job, and he's the one that passed away way too early.
Yeah, his career, that sucked how it ended.
He had at least another 10 years left.
Yeah.
At least. Wendy Richter is in. Do you think she deserves to be in?
No.
I don't think she did enough.
No, and that's the thing. It's like Wendy Richter, just because you were there, like Cindy, that's the thing I have a problem with the celebrity stuff. It's like Drew Carey's in there. Drew Carey.
I mean, he did a couple of funny gags at the Royal Rumble. That's about it.
Right.
Like, Bob Uecker, I can live with. The Fridge, I can live with.
Pete Rose was like the best.
Pete Rose.
I took bumps. He got pile driven by Kane every year.
Mike Tyson. I can live with Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
I can even live with Donald Trump. I can live with Mr. T. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Snoop Dogg?
Yeah, Snoop was stupid.
Like Mr. T again. And it's funny because I was watching a lot of Wrestling Challenge from '87. He's still in there. Like, this is after WrestleMania 3.
Really?
He's still doing shit. Nothing of anything important. Like, he's a guest referee. He comes out, cuts a promo, and he's not doing a whole lot, but he's still around. I thought he was gone right after WrestleMania 2, but that wasn't the case. You know, Donald Trump, you know, regardless of how you feel politically, he was very involved in WrestleMania 4 and 5.
Yeah.
They did a headline of WrestleMania, the Battle of the Billionaires. I can live with that. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, I love Bob Uecker. Bob Uecker was awesome in his 2 WrestleMania appearances.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way, like, you could tell that he was having a great time, and he was probably half drunk. You know what I mean? Maybe I'll do an entire show on Sailor Art Thomas. Probably not, though. We missed them on our Black History Month episode.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or Sailor Art. That's where we should have Hall of Fame.
What?
Just for matches.
A match Hall of Fame?
Match Hall of Fame.
So, what are your top 5 match Hall of Fames? Or Hall of Fame matches?
I would say, like, Steamboat Savage.
Yeah.
He's up there. I think, in its entirety, the Flair Sting, or was it Flair Funk?
There's 2 angles intertwined, because it's the Flair Steamboat going into the Flair Funk. And that's WCW 89 in a nutshell.
Yep.
But the 5-star match is the I Quit match and New York Knockout.
Yeah.
But even the Steamboat matches were awesome, too. You could probably lump those all together.
Yeah. Because I think what we often think of is like, yeah, okay, well, this guy performed well. Well, yeah, sure he did. But let's talk about who performed the best together consistently and, you know, had the best matches. I still think one of the best matches I ever saw was, I think it was Clash of the Champions 1, and it was Midnight Express versus the Fantastics. And it was that one where Bobby Eaton bulldogged one of the Fantastics on the table. And it was a flat out, from start to finish, they hated each other, they didn't wait for the bell, they got right at it, they were brutal, it was back and forth, Cornette was in there cheating. It was just, the fans were into it. Really hot match. Didn't go long. It was timed well, executed perfectly.
10 minutes long.
Yeah. You know, good spots. And at the end, they were whipping Bobby Fulton with the belt. I mean, it was just, you know, good putting over the heat, you know? Yeah. And I think it elevated the feud, you know? And that's the thing. It's like, you know, you watch a match, okay.
Like, I would put in, like, Iron Man match, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels. The second Austin Rock match. I like that one the best, personally. Rock Hogan. Hogan Andre. Just for its significance.
Mm-hmm.
Hogan Savage, WrestleMania 5. Savage Warrior, WrestleMania 7.
I had to rewatch some of these and really figure out.
In terms of, you want to talk about NWA WCW, like, other than Flair, Like, if it doesn't have Flair or Barry Windham in it, you're gonna have a hard time finding like that quality of matches. Like, because obviously, like Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express stands out, but which one of their matches? Because the pay per view, like their whole shit was fucked. Because their pay per views didn't go anywhere. So like you didn't end up with like a card that had, oh, the Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express for the NWA World Title. Oh, and Sting versus Flair, and this guy. Like they didn't build it up. Even their Starcades weren't WrestleMania quality. Even WrestleMania wasn't WrestleMania quality for a couple of years, where like you didn't see all the feuds end at a pay per view because they were running house shows the next day. Like for example, like did we ever get the fucking Tito Santana Rick Martel fucking blow off match at a big pay per view? Nope. What about Bad News Brown and fucking Randy Savage? Nope. Earthquake Hulk Hogan? No. So again, it's a different time now. If they were built like it was built today, which is much how I make the matches for the NWA project, where it's like, okay, we're gonna have these huge matchups on pay per view. It makes it a little bit easier. I mean, I can only assume there's 1,000 Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express matches that are fantastic.
Right.
But there's no video evidence of them anywhere, so it's hard to figure out which one you would put. Like, we could do one from Louisiana in 1984. You know what I mean? But we gotta find it. So again, we was like, in terms of match Hall of Fames, like, it's hard to do because like I always go back and look at WrestleMania results and like, oh, that was a fantastic match, or this match is my favorite match of all time, or that kind of stuff. I did make a mixtape, a compilation VHS tape of what I thought the greatest matches ever were, and I pop it in one day, and the first match is fucking Shawn Michaels versus Diesel of WrestleMania 11. I'm like, oh, fuck this tape. I was like, oh, my sensibilities have definitely changed over the years. Well, I put Brett and Owen for WrestleMania 10 in there.
Yeah, that was a good match.
Yeah. Definitely. Because that angle was done so well, too. Like, would you put Starrcade 84's Dusty versus Flair? The way that fucking ended?
Yeah, could be. I mean, the Bret Hart Stone Cold I Quit match.
Well, yeah, I mean, that fucking goes in without a doubt. Well, some say, and some people will be contrarians online, they'll say, the Survivor Series 96 match was better. And I say to that person, go fuck yourself. There ain't no fucking way. Because they did the same finish they did with Piper at WrestleMania 8. Fucking Austin had him in the fucking $1 Million Dream. He fucking walks up the turnbuckles, landed back, and pins him. Oh, fuck that shit. I mean, you can throw some war game matches in there.
Yeah.
91 especially is the one that kind of sticks out. The one where JJ breaks his shoulder, that one sticks out.
Yep.
Sting Squadron. Fuck Sting Squadron. I think it was 92, actually, the one I'm thinking of. Sting Squadron versus the Dangerous Alliance. Go back and watch WCW in 1992. I challenge anyone to do that. You'll see some weird shit. Like, they were clearly on dope. They clearly on dope. And they try to do Primetime. They try to copy Primetime. Because you remember at the end of the run on Primetime, they would have a studio audience?
Yeah.
And they try to do it with WCW. But they'd be all like homeless people.
Yeah.
It's like you can't get the same caliber of people in Stamford, Connecticut that you could in fucking Atlanta, Georgia. You think they'd be some big in fucking metropolis? Like, what are you doing?
I think that's one of the problems they had with TNA or Impact, whatever you want to call it, was that they were shooting that at Orlando with like tourists.
Well, yeah, I mean WCW did that too. Disney, and you get no crowd reaction. You have to pipe it in, and if you're not the WWE, you don't know how to pipe that shit in. It sounds ridiculous. Even some of the WWE stuff sounds ridiculous from time to time. Like, to be honest, if you go back and watch some SmackDowns or some Raws, you go back and watch some Raws, and you hear anyone chant Triple H, Triple H, Triple H. That shit's fucking piped in. No one fucking chants Triple H.
Yeah, there you go.
What do you think some of the best pay-per-views of all time? Like, if you had to pick your favorite pay-per-view, top to bottom, favorite show.
Boy. Well, I think the Royal Rumble is always a good one because it usually is a fun spectacle.
89 was good, 90 was good, 91 was good, 92 was good.
Back when Survivor Series was, actually ramped up and set up that way.
Remember the fucking 10-man fucking tag?
Yeah.
Where it was 10 guys on each team? It's like, what the fuck?
It's just the way, like, SummerSlam always seems to be really good. It's almost like they don't really figure out WrestleMania every year, and then they kind of get it all right for SummerSlam.
Yeah, they dropped the ball with numerous WrestleManias. I'm not even talking about recent ones. Again, as a fan of vintage or retro wrestling, a lot of those WrestleManias don't hold up. I'm looking at you, WrestleMania 2. You don't hold up well. WrestleMania 1 is not good, not a good show either. I don't give WrestleMania 1 a pass because it's the first WrestleMania, but it's not any different than any other fucking MSG house show at the time. Hell, the house show before and the house show after were better cards. You didn't have Special Delivery Jones on it, or Matt Bourne. When you had Rocky Johnson, Tony Atlas, the British Bulldogs, Bret Hart, all on your roster.
Yeah.
I think Inoki was on the show after. They were sprinkling Japanese talent anyway. Those MSG shows. You never saw Inoki work the Boston Garden though. I'll tell you that much. I mean, I can go back and we can talk about some of the worst pay-per-views of all time. WrestleMania 2 is it's just booked wrong.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that Bundy and Hogan should have been the main event. You'll debate that, but it should have been Terry Funk, Hulk Hogan should have been the main event on that show. And you can tell by fucking King Kong Bundy's ascension and descension on the card. WrestleMania 1, SD Jones. WrestleMania 2, Hulk Hogan. WrestleMania 3, Hillbilly Jim with midgets. There's a fucking problem there. Which one of those do not fit?
Yeah.
He had the Hercules Ricky Steamboat match on WrestleMania 2 wasn't bad.
Ugh.
But when you had 3 commentating teams, you had Elvira calling the main event with Jesse Ventura and Alfred Hayes. But it's not like Starrcade 90, Future Shock. Oh, that's 89. Nice. Starrcade 90 with the Black Scorpion was fucking any better. That shows the drizzling shit still. Great American Bash 91. Although I have a soft spot and I do like that show, and it's a bad show. That's the show when Luger won the belts from Barry Windham. It was vacant because Flair just left. And you can hear audibly throughout the crowd, "We want Flair."
Oh.
Yeah. Was that a 6-man with Dustin Rhodes and the Young Pistols taking on the Freebirds and Bad Street.
Young Pistols.
That Tracy Smothers wasn't bad, but that fucking Steve Armstrong was drizzling shits.
Yeah.
So WrestleMania season is rapidly approaching, guys. Do we have any cards? Do we have any? So the matches for WrestleMania 33 are as follows. You have Bray Wyatt versus To Be Determined. And you also have Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg.
Yeah.
Other than that, we have no matches announced. It is currently the middle of February. We have no matches announced. So we're about a month away. 5 weeks. Any idea what matches they're going to do?
I don't know.
Like who's the Undertaker going to wrestle this year?
Yeah, exactly.
Because they have Fastlane on the 5th. Funny thing about Fastlane, they only announced 3 matches for Fastlane, which is Kevin Owens versus Goldberg, Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman, and then Neville taking on Jack Gallagher.
Yeah, Jack.
Well, that should be on the pre-show, but that's a whole other story. But Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman, what do you do there? Because you want to keep Braun strong, don't you? Does he kill Roman Reigns?
Yeah.
He should, right? In all, he should beat 2 minutes. He should beat him, right? I think they're clearly going to put the belt on Goldberg. Do you think they're putting the belt on Goldberg? I don't understand why would you do that, but
I hope they don't, only because he can't wrestle. Like, he can do a 3-minute match. It's Ultimate Warrior all over again.
it's worse than the Ultimate Warrior. Like, you're going to put the belt on him so you go drop it to Brock, who's never going to defend it until SummerSlam? And who the fuck is the U.S. champion right now? Oh, it's Chris Jericho, right?
Yes.
So you're going to have Owens fight Jericho for the U.S. belt as your main event program until SummerSlam?
Maybe.
It's unfucking believable. Yeah, this thing's coming out. It's a mess already. I'm sorry. It's a mess. We inherited a mess. It's a mess. It's a mess. It's like, it's not good stuff at all. And I try to be positive, guys. I try to be positive with all this shit. But it looks like they have no idea what they're doing right now. They have zero concept of what's going on. Like, if I'm booking the show, if I'm booking WrestleMania 33, I think my matches are as follows. I think clearly we have Kevin Owens versus Chris Jericho, and that should be for the Universal Championship, right? That's what I would book. That should be maybe in a cage. I would do. You would have to do Goldberg Lesnar, so Lesnar gets his win back, but no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
I would do Undertaker Cena, right? And depending if Seth Rollins is back, it should be Seth Rollins, Samoa Joe. It should be Braun Strowman taking on the Big Show. And Braun Strowman should beat the shit out of him, right? AJ Styles. What do you do with AJ? Do you put him with Dean Ambrose? Maybe. Apollo Crews?
Right.
Dolph Ziggler? See, it seems to me that AJ Styles is the odd man out currently. There's no one for him to feud with. Unless you're going to bring someone over. Now, you didn't bring Joe over to SmackDown, was what I would have done originally. But right now, you have no one for AJ Styles to wrestle. Now, he might be involved in whatever Money in the Bank IC ladder match thing they're going to do.
Yeah.
But that's just going to be a waste. Do you do a three-way? Would you do a three-way with Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt, and AJ Styles?
Probably. That's their go-to crutch for whenever they don't know what to do with something.
Because you have to put him on the show. You're not going to put him against Cena again. Cena doesn't have the belt anyway. You're not going to put him against Ambrose. You're not going to put him in the IC ladder match. You're not going to put him in the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. He's not going to fight The Miz or Dolph Ziggler because they're both heels. So you would have to insert him in that match. He would have to be a three-way. And maybe he beats both. But yeah, they fucking dropped the ball on this.
Yeah.
And then you have your women's match on SmackDown, which would be Naomi taking on somebody. Alexa Bliss. That wouldn't last long anyway. But that's going to be some sort of fatal 8-way or some shit.
Yeah.
Or fucking 10-man tag. Because on Raw, they're going to have a women's match. The Raw women are going to have a match. So whether it be Charlotte and Bayley, Sasha and Charlotte, Nia versus Charlotte, Nia versus Bayley, they're going to have a women's match, a one-on-one encounter. And SmackDown's women's not as strong right now, even with the inclusion of Mickie James. They're not strong. I don't know what they're going to do on their end for that. So it seems to me, although we are 6 weeks away from WrestleMania, still it seems like a mess. Again, they only have 3 matches announced for Fastlane. That's 2 weeks away. Unless you'll do some sort of fucking giant Iron Man match or some shit. We're not heading into good shape here.
Yeah.
It's like it seems like all the momentum coming off the Rumble has fucking dissipated. The only thing I'm really excited about is to see Samoa Joe possibly beat the shit out of Seth Rollins, possibly beat the shit out of Roman Reigns. Maybe get a tag team match of Samoa Joe and Triple H taking on Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
You know, especially if Seth Rollins is not 100%. Could see the return of Finn Balor at some point. Some people say he should be going against The Undertaker. But no, you're just going to make Finn look bad because you don't realize how small he is. You know, he's not a big guy. You put him next to The Undertaker, it's going to look ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially, he's over, but he's not there yet.
Right.
And you want to keep him away from anyone that's going to make him look bad. He should be in matches with Seth Rollins. He can be in matches with Roman Reigns. He can be in matches with Chris Jericho, Kevin Owens. But keep him the fuck away from a Goldberg, a fucking Brock Lesnar, an Undertaker. You know what I mean? Keep him away from those guys, Braun Strowman, because again, he's not big, and you don't want to make him look bad. And if he would, and maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, maybe you could have a match with Undertaker, but not at this point. It's way too early.
Yeah.
You know, if he would have been around, for the past 6 months, and it wasn't out with an injury, then you could probably do it. But not at this point. It's way too early. We could see a return to Hulk Hogan, though, at the show.
Yeah.
Maybe Hulk Hogan comes in, beats everyone for the belts, and unifies the championship.
Ugh.
The WrestleMania 9 reference. That's the funny joke about WrestleMania 9. You know, the main event is Bret Hart versus Yokozuna. Who won, Hulk Hogan?
Yeah. Right. Ugh.
Oh boy. Okay, guys, we are officially running out of time. So, guys, I do apologize for the lack of information on San Francisco wrestling. There just wasn't a lot of information out there to be had. But again, if you guys find information on San Francisco wrestling, please let me know. Leave a link somewhere. I'll look into it, and we'll revisit San Francisco wrestling on the later dates. Our next show will be another cornucopia of great wrestling matches throughout the NWA, a best of the NWA, so to speak. After that, we're going to have the Last Stampede. That will be live from the Superdome in New Orleans. The Mid-South will be presenting that show for us. Don't know who's going to be on it. It's only a week away now. Main event of that show will feature the Junkyard Dog in some capacity.
Yeah.
Because it is New Orleans, it is 1983, and it is the Junkyard Dog, so... grab them cakes.
Damn right.
Uh-huh. So for Matt Riley, I'm Lex G. Have a good night.